So, where does a record like this begin for you? Are you the kind of guy who's, and I think you are the kind of guy who's always writing, has little bits and pieces, and at a point in time, these things call to you and say, John, this isn't Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff, let's go put this down, or, I mean, how does it work?
Well, I don't write lyrics in the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I'm a songwriter. So what I do in the Chili Peppers has more to do with putting little pieces together and putting, because I'm leaving a lot in the hands of three other people, But I mean, what I consider myself to be above all else is a songwriter, and so this is why I write songs. This is where the Chili Peppers, I might write a whole song, but it's still just a guitar part.
I see.
Like these, and I've been writing lyrics since I was 11 years old, and I've been getting better and better at it since I was 11 years old. So these are the songs that I write. And there's so many more that don't, from this period of time that aren't on this. There was about 14 songs that were contenders to be for the Brown Bunny soundtrack for Vincent Gallo's movie, which 5 of which ended up on the soundtrack album. And then there's a bunch of electronic stuff that was all programmed, which I'll probably never do anything with. But I have, there's definitely a few CDs worth of material that was made in demo form of this period of time that were not the songs for this album, So it's just, I write different types of things. The stuff that I do in Brown Bunny is very sad music, and it's music that's not meant to have drums. It's just meant to have an acoustic guitar and maybe a couple of the electric guitar overdubs and a vocal, and the stuff that was on this album was meant to be stuff that would be very elaborately produced. We were excited about albums like I don't know, like Violator by Depeche Mode or something, where there's a lot, where it's a very extreme type of production.
That's what you'd call it, an extreme kind of production? I mean, is that how you would?
For this album, yeah, it's very produced.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I'm really using the studio like an effect, rather than rather than just using the studio to have a realistic representation of what we sound like playing together. And in this album, I'm using the studio. I'm using things like compression and echo and reverb in a very extreme kind of way.
So, I mean, a song like Carvel, which opens the album. I mean, describe to me how that track develops, or what's the recording process like with you? How does it build? What goes on, and how does it?
Well, I mean, that song, the first thing we did was make a demo recording of that song. Most of the songs on this album we made 8-track demos of on a cassette 8-track. So, that was usually where most of the experimenting happened. I guess, how did it go? Oh, I remember. I did that demo pretty much by myself, as I remember it. I recorded the guitar, Josh overdubbed drums, and I did a synth bass, and then I took my Mellotron sounds, which I had on those samples on a emulator, and I just tried to use sounds that I didn't normally use. So I used one sound for the intro, I used another sound for the verse, I used another sound for the third section. Like I tried to use a different sound for every section, and so that was that, and then Josh and I always make up our harmonies once something is in the demo form. We think of you know, where we're going to do harmonies and things.
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we make up harmonies, and that's probably the final stage. But then,
so in the studio with you, is it you and Chad? I mean, is it you with an acoustic guitar recording an acoustic guitar part? I mean, the actual tracking part of it.
yeah.
And then, I mean, the bass part. I mean,
Well, in this case, see, Josh had written all the drum parts, so Chad, it was pretty much me and Josh sitting in a room teaching these drum parts to Chad, and Josh would usually play bass, and I'd play guitar. You know, there were some songs where I was meant to play bass on them, so Josh didn't. So it was just me and Chad tracking them. But
I mean, how do you? There's something with your rhythm playing that is so uniquely you, and I'm not quite sure. I mean, where does that come from? I mean, there's like flamenco, there's Spanish, there's funk, there's blues stuff in there, and I know you listen to a lot of people, but how does it come out to be you? How is it that I can recognize you? Is it a picking thing? Is it a strum? You know, I mean, whatever guitar you play, it's like you.
right.
You know what I mean? And I hear this record, and it's like, well, it's a solo record, but nobody has to tell me that. Oh, that's the guy from the Chili Peppers. I mean, is it a sound? Is it a technique? You know,
It's just something that comes from playing. Well, I mean, to me, I can recognize most of my favorite guitar players playing.
Yeah.
There's something inside each person's. There's something that makes no two people's muscles and skin and the electricity in any one individual's body is totally different from another person. And you know, I mean, you know, to me, you can hear somebody like Jeff Beck's playing in one note. You know,
right.
you know, it's just because it's just each person has their own sound. I mean, I think as I've grown as a musician, I've just gotten more comfortable with sounding like myself rather than that I've gradually sounded more and more like myself. To me, it's just been like, you know, I think a lot of guitar players cover themselves up in ways, you know, and I've gotten more into the idea of having my playing be in kind of a naked state.
Right, right. I think you described it once as kind of a human feel, a naked state. Yeah. So, describe to me your rhythm technique. How would you describe it? I mean, is it a very hard strum? Is it a reckless thing? Is it I mean,
I definitely do both. I definitely do play as hard as you could play at a lot of the time, but I've definitely also in the last few years gotten into the things that can be done with gentle playing as well. You know, there certain harmonics and things that only come out if you play gentle, and then when you play hard, it really means something as well.
I mean, you have a very, and tell me if you agree with this, you have a very kind of acoustic guitar approach to your electric rhythm playing. I mean, would you agree with that? I mean, your acoustic playing is amazing, and yet you bring that to the electric playing. Your rhythm playing has an acoustic feel to it, your electric rhythm playing. Would you agree with something like that?
I guess so. I don't know. I do. You know, I play both things a lot, so it's. I guess you might be talking about like strumming really hard.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
because they are kind of two different animals in my mind, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say if one influences the other. I mean, I don't give a lot of thought to you know, my rhythm playing is just, it comes very naturally. I mean, it's definitely as far as the strength of my right wrist goes, that comes from punk, you know. That just comes from from playing all downstrokes. And you know, like punk is where I started playing, and it's that's where all that power and it comes from, and then part of it comes from having played funks so much with Flea. You know, we've spent endless thousands of hours playing funk grooves together, and you know, that's where probably a lot of the delicacy and the finesse in my right wrist comes from. It's just spending so much time doing that, you know. It's probably my main place, you know, that I express myself is through playing rhythm guitar,
right,
but
absolutely.
at the same time, it's not really something I'm that conscious of,
right,
really, you know.
Right.
I mean, it's the normal thing I do.
I mean, would you describe yourself as a soloist in the kind of traditional sense of a solo player? I mean, I don't think you are. And again, your approach to your solos is very kind of, I don't know how to describe it. You know, you'll kind of, you'll pick out the chord, a couple notes in a chord, you know, and kind of use the chords as a solo, or it'll be a little quick little, you know,
well,
you know what I mean?
I'm just not. Yeah, I'm more interested in doing things texturally with the guitar and trying to come up with ways of playing that I find interesting. And for me, the rock star guitar soloing approach is a dead end for me. You know, I don't see that many people like ever really taking it anywhere. And to me, the most interesting guitar players that we've had over the last 20 years have not been soloists. They've been people like, I'm just telling you my taste.
Yeah,
The people who I admire are Bernard Sumner from Joy Division and New Order, Johnny Marr from The Smiths, Johnny Greenwood and Radiohead, Kurt Cobain and Nirvana. None of these people were soloists, you know. So, these people all did interesting things with their sound, and they do interesting lead guitar things, but it's not like flashy, and it's not, you know. I just, to me, that guitar playing kind of reached a peak with Jimmy Page, and I don't really think anybody's ever taken it any further than Jimmy Page, you know. You know, Eddie Van Halen, I thought, went to an interesting place with it, but again, I don't think it ever went anywhere from there. You know, I'd love it if somebody came along and was doing some kind of flashy, you know, lead guitar playing that interested me. But I find that the people who take it in a more interesting direction are people who more work with sound and more work with the ways in which the electric guitar can be turned into many different instruments. You know, if you just limit yourself to the electric guitar from the, you know, blues lead guitar standpoint, it's just a few instruments, you know. But you start looking at what somebody like Keith Levine and Public Image did on their first couple of albums. You know, it's a different instrument for every song, and no one represents the other one. I mean, the electric guitar is such a versatile thing. It's one of, you know, it's, to me, it's the greatest instrument that ever was invented. It's just, it can be so many things, and it's just endless what it can be. What Robert Fripp, the instrument Robert Fripp plays is not the instrument that Jimi Hendrix played. It's not the instrument that John McGeoch in Magazine played. You know, it's, you know, and you know, I just see so many different ways that it can go, and you know, sometimes live in the Chili Peppers I get into doing a sort of a flashy rock star lead guitar thing, but it's more because of the energy of playing in front of an audience, and it's not really something I'm interested in musically. It's more something that I do because I get off on the interaction between the audience and the excitement that's generated in the exchange of love and that kind of thing, and a lot of the time that makes me play in a way that's more blues based and flashy and stuff. So I don't know, if you've ever seen me live, you might have seen a more of a glimpse of me as a lead guitar player. But usually, if I'm thinking more in terms of music and what I'm interested in, like when I'm making a record, you know, to me, lead guitar playing should be something that either makes some sort of a textural, sonic statement within the song, or it should be something that is a melody as beautiful as something that you would sing. You know.
Right. Which brings us to the next point. So, a song like Second Walk, I mean, that little lead thing, that little overdriven thing, I mean, where does that come from? Is that something that, you know, you sit down and you're hearing the changes and it's there, or it's just kind of first take, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's usually like first take.
It is.
Yeah, just
with the Chili's as well?
To play. Yeah, I mean, I guess what happens a lot of the time in the Chili Peppers is the first time we decide to make a solo section in a song, like, and I was really against having any solo sections. Like, everybody really had to talk me into having.
I know. I mean, you never do like more than 8 bars in a solo.
Yeah,
ever.
I wasn't into it, and you know, I go through periods, and it seems like usually when I'm recording, I'm into it, and when I'm on tour, I want the solos all to be longer, and you know, you know, on tour I'll go up there and solo for 10 minutes, you know, but if it's on a record, I don't want to solo at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I mean, you touched on melody. Your solo is obviously very lyrical, very melodic. But I mean, where do those notes come from? Are there certain kinds of scales that you like working from, or I mean, are there chord tones? I mean, you're a pretty observant musician guy. I mean, you understand changes and theory and stuff. So I mean, where do you go to find the notes? I mean, I know the texture, I know the effect you want, but where do you go, kind of scholastically looking for those notes to begin with?
I usually try to create some kind of interesting juxtaposition between whatever Flea's playing and whatever I'm playing. You know, if I try to work with the space between what we do and make that space. I'm more thinking about shaping the space that's between what the bass and the guitar is doing, rather than thinking about what can I do over this. It's more like okay, Flea's putting the pole over here. I'm going to put a pole over here, and thereby creating this color in between us. You know, and that really is more the way that I think. The theoretical things that I think of more have to do with doing things to create space in an interesting way. You know, like.
Where on what songs have you done that where you've done it really well? On your record, which solos or which parts really worked for you?
Well, that's something I talk about that happens between me and Flea. That you know, on my stuff it doesn't really work that way. On my stuff, I'm just.
But there's more freedom, I would think, with your solo stuff, right? I mean.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's an equal amount of freedom in both things, but I'm not thinking so much about the space between me and somebody else. I'm just thinking how to embellish a song of mine. You know?
I see.
Like something like the solo at the end of Omission. It was just the idea of this really grand ending, and then having a solo with a really small Tom Verlaine type tone. You know.
That's what you described that as.
Yeah.
And what guitar is that?
Probably a Jaguar, I would imagine.
The Jag?
Stratocaster, I can't remember.
Your 62 Strat and the Jag were pretty much the main guitars for the record?
I just know that if I was to play a song like that, the Jaguar would probably come to mind, but I really can't remember what I was playing.
It sounds like a Jag, actually. Yeah. Interesting. So, I mean, let me jump to a Chili Pepper song for a second. I mean, a song like Dosed. I mean, I thought the intro on that and that stuff you're doing, it's like the rhythm thing, and it's like that was freaking great. Okay. So, I mean, where does that come from?
Well,
and how do you work? Because it's the 2 parts you're creating yourself. It's really the ballot, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
that song came from when everybody else was outside taking a break during a rehearsal. I was in there, and I had that loop. That line 6 green loop pedal.
Yeah.
So I made a loop of one guitar part, and then I added to it another guitar part, and then I added another part, and then I had those 3 guitar parts playing, and then I was playing over that, and then when everybody else came in, I had this beautiful loop going, and that was what that is. when we did it on the record, I played each guitar part as its own guitar part on the recording, so we could spread it out in stereo and stuff.
Gotcha.
But I'm playing just what I would play at rehearsal in the loop. You know?
Right. I understand. And I mean, a song like "Can't Stop." I mean, when you're playing a track, are there points where you can say, "Oh, it's not right, it's not working," and you kind of need to step back, or maybe the timing thing got a little off? I mean, your timing always seems so impeccable.
It's pretty good.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable, especially because you play so simply. I mean, it's easy to kind of cover it up with kind of, big kind of power chords and stuff. So this goes back to just understanding your instrument.
Can't Stop was just what I played with Chad when we were tracking it.
Wow.
You know, that's usually what it is. I mean,
amazing.
Yeah, there's not. I usually don't fix things. It's
So it's not a lot of punching or editing or
no.
Pretty much live for you.
Yeah.
Same on your record. I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of keyboard stuff on your record.
Uh-huh.
I mean, well, more than with the Chili's anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, does that bring you to another place? I mean, playing against a Beatles Mellotron pad, or the Hammond sounds, or
it was just all part of my idea for this record. I just wanted it to have a lot of different keyboard sounds all the time, and I wanted to sort of center the record around having unusual sounds coming one after the other. And, for me, for us, when we would make the demos, that was always the really fun part of it, is finding interesting synthesizer sounds or keyboard sounds to color the songs.
Mm-hmm.
We were thinking very much in terms of just of finding as many colors as we could to embellish the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just where Josh and I are at. He probably plays more of the keyboard parts than I do on the record, because he's better at the keyboards,
right.
But I do a lot of them too.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and there's a fair amount of acoustic guitar on your record too. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I write the songs on acoustic guitar, so it makes sense to have them playing. But that was also part of my concept for the record, was that in a section of music, like for instance in the song "Omission," when it gets really fast towards the end of it, I could have easily put an electric guitar there. It would have made sense to put an electric guitar there, but the idea was to have the electric guitar would be missing, and you'd have the acoustic guitar just strumming really hard and fast, and have the drums rocking and stuff, and have that sort of space where the electric guitar would normally be. That was just part of my idea for the sound of the record. I usually didn't try to overstate things with electric guitar that could be simply stated with acoustic guitar.
So tell me how you record your acoustics.
Just lately, let's see, what was I doing on the record? I can't remember what kind of microphone we were using on the record.
Can you remember?
Can't remember. I can't remember. I know what I like now is like a C24 or a KM54 for the acoustic guitar, but I can't remember at the time of the record.
What kind of acoustic guitars do you use?
Martin's from the 50s.
From the 50s?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, the small brown Martins.
Huh. Yeah. You obviously like the Martin sound. It's got a very specific kind of a sound.
Yeah, I love them.
You do. What are you playing on Cabron? Is that like a high-strung guitar and all that Spanish?
No, it's a capo.
It is a capo.
Yeah, it's a capo on the 7th fret.
That was freaking great. I mean, that part was just
thanks. Yeah, that's inspired by Martin Barr's guitar playing in Jethro Tull on Aqualung.
Really?
Yeah, because he that's where that song comes from, is just because I had learned all the songs on Aqualung, and I wanted to do, because he's using the capo all the time on the album, and so I just tried to write something like that. The fact that it ended up as like this Mexican sounding thing has more to do with Anthony's vocal and Chad's drums than it does with my guitar part. My guitar part, if you just analyze the guitar part in of itself, it's coming more from a prog rock standpoint.
That's interesting.
It was a real flashy kind of busy guitar thing. It was a funny thing for Anthony to want to build a song around, because I just had written it as this guitar piece, you know.
I see.
But he wanted to make a song out of it because it did have a kind of a simplicity underlying the complexity of it. So.
Exactly. So in a sense, I mean, in the Chili's, are what you doing guitar-wise is sort of a balance, a complement to maybe what Anthony is doing, kind of in the way the vocal is structured, kind of melodically and lyrically. In other words, you know, when you're kind of, there was a one Chili song where you're just picking on that string. It's just an effect thing. Don't Forget Me. You know, in the verse, you kind of just, it's like a little, but it's almost like it could have been almost like a little vocal thing. You know what I mean? It's like you're answering his vocal guitar-wise. I mean,
no, his vocal answers my guitar part. The guitar always comes before the vocals in the Chili Peppers. So when you hear the guitar and the vocals doing the same thing, it's usually because he's singing my guitar or whatever. I mean,
yeah. Well, that clears up a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, the vocals come after. We usually write the music, and then he adds the vocals to the music.
So you would have had that little thing going on in the second verse and before his vocal.
Oh, yeah. No, my idea for the verse was to go back and forth between a real machine-like kind of sound to a real flowing sound.
Yeah.
I go back and forth
between
the left-hand trills to the machine-like thing. And when Flea first was playing the bass line, that was what that song is an example of Flea playing the same bass line over and over for like a half hour while I play different guitar parts over it. And those were just probably the first three guitar parts I played was that, and then he stepped on the fuzz, and I stepped on my wah-wah pedal and turned it to the trebliest position, and that's what the chorus is. It doesn't come off that. You should try to hear a live version of that song, because on the record, Rick made the harmonies much louder, and he turned the guitar down in the chorus, but the idea for the chorus of that song is the really overdriven, like, heavy, over-the-edge kind of thing, and if you hear, like, we put out a live version of it as a B-side on one of the singles for this album, and that's where you can hear, like, what the original intention of that section was to really push it over the edge. But you know, that sound that you're talking about, it's because I have an echo set on triplets for the whole song.
Oh, I see.
It's going bump, bump, like the tempos, the echoes. Bump, 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 and then if I'm picking 16th notes, with the triplet echo going, it makes it sound like and actually the person I was thinking of when I came up with that was Daniel Ash. If you hear a Bauhaus song called there's a Bauhaus song called it's the first song on their first album.
I don't know them well enough to know. Sorry.
I'll think of it.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, I love that. I mean, the instrumentals on here. Is it a different approach doing an instrumental song versus a vocal song? I mean, besides the obvious fact of a vocal, but I mean, is the guitar, the approach any different? Is it,
the instrumental songs on here, I don't think they have guitar.
They don't really? They just
23 Go End to End has guitar, but it's not me or Josh. It's Omar Rodriguez from the Mars.
Really?
He's playing slide guitar on it.
Negative.
No,
Ghost
there's no guitar on that.
Just all kind of keyboard, weird pads and things in, or
that -00 Ghost 27 is a sound that I set up on the modular synthesizer to process a choir sound from a mellotron. And,
I see.
And I just had Josh. I set up the sound, and then I had Josh comes in and it sort of turns the mellotron into this feedbacky, very like harsh sounding thing, and so I brought Josh in, and 5 minutes later we had what you hear on the record. You know, it was just that piece took as long to record and to conceive as it takes to listen to it. It was more about me just setting up a patch, you know, and when it came to like, but it was like 23 going to end. We just basically spent a whole day, feeling like we were underwater, just making this very ambient kind of piece of music that we were inspired by, by Brian Eno's ambient records, and we were inspired by Edgar Froze's record, which is called Epsilon in Malaysian Pale. And we were excited about that album.
Any kind of Zappa stuff in there?
For the instrumental stuff?
Yeah, I might heard a little bit of that. No.
I mean, let me say, no.
What about something like, Water kind of strikes me as having sort of a, kind of like, almost like a 60s retro Kinks, Who, Happy Jack rhythm thing going on? I mean, does that make any sense?
No, I mean, for me, I mean, Josh and I both love the Kinks, especially Josh, and I suppose I was listening to the album Arthur a lot while we were around the time that we were making this record, but for that song, when I wrote it, I was trying to write something like the Talking Heads.
Yeah, I got that too. Right.
And for the outro section, I was playing Chad an Aphex Twin beat, and where the drums are always going off time and stuff, and I tried to get him to do something along those lines,
Interesting.
Where you're playing some really fast beat, and the drums keep going. You do drum fills that are off time.
60s feel to it.
Yeah, to me that sounds like it was in the 60s.
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You know what I'm saying?
When there's a solo where you're kind of, it just sounds like you're picking out like certain little like voicings out of the chords
song?
for the solo.
That's Josh.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no.
I just have like a
no apology necessary. but yeah, he's doing some kind of I think it's a Johnny Marr inspired thing. A lot of Josh's playing is very Johnny Marr inspired, and
interesting.
It's just he does like what you say that I do, which is just trying to find some interesting aspect of the chords to sort of reinstate with some kind of lead guitar.
Exactly. And I mean, do you know when you've done it right? I mean, it's a four note little phrase in one of these bits, in one of these songs. Do you know when, the four notes are right?
Yeah, I'm never unclear about what's good or what's not good. I always am very sure of myself.
Interesting. Which is why you produce your own records, obviously.
Yeah.
So, Rick Rubin's take on your playing, does he hear it? I understand it's a band and you're essentially backing a singer and it's a different thing, but does he interpret your playing the way that you would if you were producing your guitars for the Chili's? Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I do produce my guitars for
the
Chili's. Rick doesn't have anything to do with them.
It's just more just kind of the mix and stuff. He's kind of...
Rick more has to do with the drums and the vocals and the mixing. When it comes to my guitar playing, he leaves me alone, and when it comes to Flea's bass playing, he leaves him alone. He might suggest things to Flea occasionally, or to me he might say, it would be great if like for instance, like on the song Warm Tape off the last Chili Peppers record, he said you should do an answer thing like George Harrison does with the 12-string guitar on. There was some Beatles song, I forget which one, but I can't remember what song. Some early Beatles song where there's a 12-string answering the vocal, and he suggested that I do something like that, and it worked perfectly with what I was thinking, because I'd already done an overdub that went at the same time as the vocal, so it ended up being like there being a slide guitar being answered by a 12-string guitar. So Rick's idea worked perfectly in conjunction with my idea, and you know, so
that track really worked.
So he'll throw, you know, he'll throw little ideas my way or whatever, but he doesn't say like, oh, that guitar part's not working or something.
Yeah,
you know,
no, I understand.
like that,
Yeah. So, could any of these songs you did for your record have been songs you could have brought into the Chili's? I mean, some of them obviously couldn't, but I mean, is the stuff you bring to the Chili's necessarily different than what you would write for your own record?
No, I mean, you know, sometimes it's not really. I mean, sometimes I'll do something like, let's see, like I think the song "Cut Out" has a chord or two in common with "I Could Die for You" from the Chili Peppers thing.
Oh.
And I'd used the chord in one of my songs, and then I thought like I should use that chord for a Chili Peppers song, and then I write a Chili Peppers song. You know, I wrote a guitar part for the Chili Peppers using that chord. So you know, sometimes the ideas cross over. You know, but in general, it's very clear to me when I'm supposed to write the lyrics to a song of mine, because it's just something that comes over me. I can't get in the way of it. And when it comes to the Chili Peppers, it's just when I just come up with a guitar part and I don't know where else to take it. You know, I'm not thinking of a vocal.
You're not.
No.
You're just kind of thinking of
thinking of a guitar part. I'm thinking of something that to me is interesting in of itself as a guitar part. Whereas in my songs, I might not find the guitar parts that interesting as of themselves. It's more in the relationship of what I'm doing with the vocal and what I'm imagining in synthesizers and things like that.
Right. So, I mean, for your record, did you... I mean, you said you had the demos. I mean, does it start with a piece of music and then a lyric, or do you have like a notebook full of lyrics and...
Oh, no. If I write... My songs are all written at the moment that they're written.
They are?
Yeah.
Lyric, music goes down at the same time? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, if I get the idea for a song, I just sit there until it's finished, whether it takes 5 minutes or whether it takes 3 hours. It's always... I always finish it, or I don't ever finish it. You know, it's all something. Yeah, I can understand why you'd be confused if you thought that my songs were put together in pieces, but to me, that's how I do Chili Pepper stuff, is putting something together in pieces. Whereas, like, for my songs, I just conceive them at that one moment, and it all happens right then. You know.
I mean, if we had to write a paragraph on if I wanted to go get the John Frusciante sound, how do you describe that? I mean, how do you describe kind of your clean rhythm sound? How would you describe that? I mean, that chili sound that we kind of know, you know, that...
I guess hitting the guitar really hard, you know, using those orange Tortex picks and hitting
which is a big part of it. Those nylon picks, is it nylon pick you use? That's a big part of what it has to do, as opposed to plastic, I think anyway.
Yeah, so, and I used... usually I use gauge 10 strings.
Pretty heavy strings.
And if I'm playing the White Falcon, I use 12s.
Wow.
And
why the Strat as opposed to Les Pauls or Paul Reed Smiths or...
I just didn't have a Les Paul. I just got a Les Paul recently, and now the main guitars that I find myself using are the Telecaster and the Les Paul, because they just...
Really?
Between the two of those, you can just get any kind of sound, you know.
What year's the Les Paul?
This one's 1969.
69.
Yeah, I'd like to. I wish I had a 59, but they're very difficult to come by these days.
Good ones, or I'm sure any of them.
But I love the Les Paul I have. It's fine, and you know, but you know, I think like as far as the way I sound, it probably has a lot to do with the Telecaster, and you know, I don't know how much these technical things matter, because like you say, I sound that way on whatever I play.
Well,
play, like lately I play through Vox amps, I stopped playing through Marshalls, you know.
Really?
But it still sounds like me, you know.
Interesting. Well, for the people that want to know, we have to ask.
Yeah, no, I would say it has a lot to do with Marshalls and Telecasters and hitting the guitar really hard, and you know. Oh, you know what else it has a lot to do with, which is something that I do without thinking about it, but maybe people who haven't played for that long don't do it that well yet, is just being good with like say if I'm only playing say a 2-note chord or a 3-note chord, I'm still hitting all the strings. I'm just blocking the ones that I'm not using with my left hand.
Interesting.
With my thumb or with my other fingers. You know, even if the chord I'm playing is not, even if it's just a double stop, even if it's just 2 notes, I'm still hitting all the strings, and I think that has a lot to do with it, because most people, they'll be playing a 2-note chord, say in the middle of the guitar, they're only going to be picking those 2 notes because they're scared to hit the other strings. I hit all the strings. Like say, Can't Stop, the guitar part. Somebody probably learned that and they just play the individual notes that I'm playing. I'm hitting all the strings for every one of the notes. Even though I'm not ever hitting 2 notes at once, it's always it's a single note line.
Yeah.
But I'm hitting all the strings, and I'm just blocking all the ones with my left hand that aren't being played, and that's the sound.
That's
you know,
really interesting.
If I just sat there and played each note, it wouldn't sound like me at all. I have to hit all the strings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's a much more percussive thing.
Absolutely. And within a trio, I mean, it really kind of, you know, you're hearing that texture almost as much as you're kind of hearing your chord. I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what you're doing is really not a very easy thing to do, because when you're muting things, you know, you get the overtones and you know what I mean? For
it comes very naturally to me, but
so
I've become conscious of it when I've shown people my things, and I realize that's what I'm doing.
That's incredible. And obviously you've had no problems with the strats staying in tune or doing that kind of thing, or?
No, I don't have a locking tremolo or anything like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. The Slaughter was pretty interesting. The one song that you have Flea on there.
Right, yeah, he plays the upright bass on there.
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, again, I got it, and my influences might be a little bit different, but I got a little bit of a Buffalo Springfield, Broken Arrow, you know that Neil Young song? Kind of an epic acoustic thing that builds. That's how I funnel things. Yeah, it's very cool.
I can't remember what. Oh, I was just trying. You know, when I wrote that song, I think I was just trying to use certain chords. You know, I was
really like what chords? Tell me.
I could show them to you.
Could you? Yeah. You got some notes here.
The chords are pretty straight ahead.
So we're on this Slaughter now, right?
Yeah, and so the chords.
So it's A. Okay, what's this? Some kind of a weird diminished.
Diminished chord, yeah.
Weird diminished on the 1 5 4 3 2 1 2 1 2. Where's the G?
It's open.
Open 3. Okay, so I can remember this. A flat.
It starts at
A diminished thing. It's just B. C sharp minor.
Yeah, so that's.
What's this?
It's another diminished kind of chord.
So it's
it's just like that other chord, only it's up.
3 fret 5 string 4 fret
D string, second
D
fret
strings.
G string, 4th fret B string.
Thank you. What is that?
I guess it's a minor 6 chord.
What minor 6? E minor 6?
F sharp minor 6.
F sharp minor 6. Okay. 2 fret on the 6th string. Okay.
Oh, I see. It goes. They're the only ones we're changing what you do for. You know, so so does that. Yeah, so it's yeah, so and then there's an interesting chord in this part too.
B, A, what's that? It's like a 9 chord?
It's another minor 6 chord.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like a A minor 6?
Yeah, but yeah, it goes like that.
Oh,
it goes
that's
like,
the change.
It goes from A minor 6 to A major 7. You know?
A major 7, and that's the
Yeah.
little change here.
You know, so I'm always trying to look for interesting
Yeah.
things to do. Like when you make to go from A minor 6 to A major 7, it's an unusual thing.
Exactly.
It doesn't happen in that many
Exactly, because
songs,
your ear wants to hear you go to like a E or something after that, or a D or whatever. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's what you're doing.
So
you're
when
consciously
you can make something like that makes sense. When you can make, you know, odd chords like that or like that makes sense in the context of a song. I'm always looking for ways of doing that. You know, so that for me, that I was proud of that song just because I was using certain chords, and I know I'm not the only songwriter who uses that as their main reason for writing a song. It's just like, oh, I managed to make a minor 6, a major 6 chord go to a major 7 chord. You know, it's just
Absolutely.
to me that's what's like fun about writing
Cool.
songs. Is it's kind of a little mathematical game, you know, of trying to do something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, you sometimes just kind of pick up the guitar and lay your fingers on it. Just look, you know, just looking for a shape, you know. In other words, the way the strings might just, you know what I mean? Go, you know. Putting them in weird shapes. I don't know how to describe.
Yeah, that
you know
happens
what I mean?
sometimes. But usually, I see somebody else use a chord. Like I'll see Paul
see.
McCartney uses a chord, or John Lennon uses a chord, and
I see.
I try to figure out a way of using that chord myself in my own way, you know, or you know. But sometimes it just comes from practicing, you know, learning things like Charles Mingus songs or things so much that something like that probably came from some jazz thing that I was working on, you know, like I'm always fascinated with how different people use chords in different ways, and Charles Mingus definitely was one of the main people who I was studying a lot at the time of this. Yeah.
Interesting. And we'll wrap this up in a few minutes here. Can you talk at all about your vibrato? I mean, your finger vibrato. I mean, where that might have come from. I mean, you mentioned people like Clapton and Beck all have kind of these amazing finger vibratos. I mean, I don't really hear that in your playing, but I mean, is it like a little pinky finger vibrato? I mean, and there's not a whole lot of vibrato in your soloing, to be honest. Or at least I don't hear a lot.
No, that's a conscious decision. It's not that I can't.
No, I know.
Do it. Yeah, it's because I feel like people overdo it with it. You know, I feel like again, it's one of those things that I feel like somebody like Jimi Hendrix, you know, he did that to its full degree. Who's going to do it more? You know, nobody's going to do it more than that. Nobody's going to do it better than that. So, like, you know, I guess at the time of Blood Sugar and stuff, I was into doing more Jimi Hendrix type vibrato and things like that. But since then, you know, definitely in the last 5 years, the guitar players who I am inspired by are ones who don't actually have enough technical ability to be able to be doing something like that. People like Bernard Sumner or Matthew Ashman, I don't think they have enough finger strength to even do that. But that's the kind of guitar playing that I find interesting. So I end up sort of taking on those people's limitations. You know,
I understand. You take it where they couldn't take it, maybe, or kind of thing.
Yeah, I just try. Well, no, what I find interesting in guitar playing is the various limitations that people work within, and the types of creativity that comes out of working within those limitations. So what I'll do is I'll take on the limitations of a guitar player who I admire, who they're not doing something because they can't do it. I don't do it because I think it's cool not to do it. You know what I mean? So, but at least I can choose what people's limitations I want to take over, and if I want to, if I want, like, I seem to recall, like, a solo on the song "Mind Your Thing" on the Chili Peppers record, I'm doing vibrato, and it's a pretty smooth kind of vibrato. It just went with that kind of distortion sound. It's something, it's a color that I can pull out, but I want to only pull out it as a color. I don't want it to be something that I depend on, because I find that what I've accomplished by making it a point of not doing vibrato is I've found more colorful ways of arranging notes and more delicate ways of artistically balancing out the things that I'm playing, and having the notes more have to speak for themselves and the rhythms have to speak for themselves. Whereas you can dress up some uninteresting notes with vibrato and make them sound interesting. That doesn't seem like a challenge to me. To me, I'd rather try to find some notes that in of themselves with no vibrato are interesting, and like I say, if I come along to a situation where I can play vibrato, I can do it, but like, I'd rather sound like I don't have the ability, to be able to do it, because I find it exciting when I listen to people who don't have that ability.
It's such an interesting approach. I mean, the same approach with the vibrato and the Strat. I mean, if you didn't use it once in a while, you wouldn't know you're really playing a Strat.
Right.
So, I mean, your bar thing is kind of pretty minimalist. I mean, is that? Would you describe yourself? I mean, is that a fair description?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, nowadays that's how it is. If you would have met me when I was 17, you wouldn't have said that.
So I would have seen somebody else in that.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I mostly use the bar live for feedback and things. That's where I enjoy using it. In the studio. I guess it's just one of those things where it's been used a lot in different ways, and I guess I want to do things that are some sort of a new way of doing things. So it's probably usually a subtle approach is what's going to be something that nobody's done it that way before.
Right. So at the end of the day, I mean, this new record, your solo record, it turned out to be what you initially set out to create. I mean,
it's exactly what I set out to create. Yeah, it was
more realized than maybe some of the earlier solo records, or
those are all demos. Those were all like, those would have been like if I would have just released the demos of this or something. None of those were ever really conceived as I'm gonna make a record, like this was more like I had a certain group of songs, and I was collaborating with Josh, and Josh and I were always getting together, singing harmonies together and stuff, and we knew we wanted to make a record with a lot of harmonies and with a lot of keyboard parts and with a lot of songs with interesting chords and minimal guitar playing, and ourselves doing flashy bass playing and stuff, and we play the Hofner bass a lot. We had our whole idea for the record was all clear in our heads. So that's the record we made. It's we were very aware that it wasn't very because Josh is a great guitar player, and I'm known for being a guitar player, and we knew it right the day before we went into the studio. I remember saying to each other, "Should we add any guitar solos to this record?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's not a very guitar-oriented record." And we were like, I was like, "It's a shame because you have such a great style of guitar playing, and people aren't gonna have any idea." Because Josh explodes. Josh has like the Kurt Cobain kind of thing with his playing, where like when he's on stage, and he plays a solo, it's just a huge explosion, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see that many guitar players who have that degree of explosiveness
Mm-hmm.
like Kurt Cobain had and like Josh has, but but um but that's just not what we want.
Yeah.
What we were doing on this record, you know. I'm sure if someday we'll do a record where we do, you know. We're still young.
Where you'll burn. Well, cool, man. That's great.
Cool.
I appreciate it.